The only, because I tried to think of on my way here, the Big 12 coaching feuds, like anything that was similar to this, because I don't think we've really not seen anything really like this specifically with Jimbo and Saban. But going back, Craig said Gary Patterson and Art Briles, because they did not like each other. It was palpable.
I thought they went on vacation together one time.
Yeah. Gary Patterson once told Smokey and I that they went on vacation together, which was less than true.
Art Briles said, no, that didn't happen. Like, I think we ran into each other at the airport or something like that was what he said.
I saw Jancy. Jancy first told his daughter, was like, they were on the same plane to a coaching convention once. So, but Gary Patterson did this to Art a few times. One of them was in a game he won by 31 points. Accused Art Briles of sending spies to practice because who else ran a zone read out of a double tight end set? And, I mean, he couldn't have just seen you do that on the film that everybody has. Apparently they didn't have film at Baylor, but they did at TCU. I don't know, like, he did that. They got into a kerfuffle, or at least Art kind of sloughed it off, but Orion Stewart and Ahmad Dixon got into Gary Patterson's head after some penalties and ejections in a game in Fort Worth, and Gary Patterson lost his mind about it in the press conference, among other things.
There was a thing with Gary Patterson, let's just face it. He's a great football coach, but every time he lost a game, there was some excuse for why.
Yeah.
The coaches, Baylor wasn't the only team he accused of sending spies, basically, or doing this or doing that. It was a recurring trend. It wasn't every loss, but it was every big loss.
Well, he did that against Baylor after he won a game.
Even after some wins, he, if it was too close for comfort, I suppose. But yeah, that was something that he did that I could never really respect that part of his press conferences on occasion when that did happen. It became too much of a recurring theme, in my opinion.
Yeah, but the Big 12 at that time, for what I can remember, didn't really do anything about it or say anything. Just kind of let it go. The SEC had two coaches fighting for about 12 hours. I mean, all told, some of that was overnight and sleeping, but about 12 hours during the day of that feud before every SEC coach was put under of cone of silence. Lane Kiffin had to cancel media appearances today. I'm sure some other coaches might have had to too, but no one was talking. That's how the SEC works. This is a feud. We don't like it. Both coaches reprimanded. Now, nobody say anything until this blows over.
Yeah, I think the situation is a bit different because you're talking about two of the most well-known coaches in college football. And Briles and Patterson, that was more of like just a personal spat. Now, this is obviously personal as well. If it wasn't before, Jimbo certainly let it be known that it's personal now. So there is that personal element to it. But, yeah, Patterson would say that, people were in a roundabout way try to say that people cheated in their preparation or whatever. But this is Nick Saban saying flat out, A&M paid for their whole entire recruiting class and basically did so illegally. So it's a little bit, more of a shot across the bow than just little chipping back and forth. And little snide comments here and there. This is like a full-blown accusation that, is not a light one to make. It's not a light accusation to make. And so, the SEC is the SEC because they have great leadership. Yes, it's also because of the great players and the great coaches, but they didn't rise from being just one of the conferences like 20 years ago to becoming like the conference these past 20 years. They don't do that without having great leadership along the way. And that's one thing they've been able to maintain, and one thing that other conferences either have had bad commissioners or just haven't had commissioners with the guts to make the tough decisions or whatever the case may be. But the SEC has had strong leadership. And then you combine that with strong brands and strong head coaches and great players and all of that and great TV deals. And that's why they are where they are right now. But yeah, I commend the SEC for, bringing the hammer down and not even letting Lane Kiffin do a radio interview today, knowing full well he was going to probably say something crazy, not anything along the lines of what Fisher and Saban said, but certainly he was going to make headlines with whatever he had to say, and he's king troll, so he's going to have some kind of shots in there that would get a bunch of headlines going. So Yeah, I mean, they're very well run. I mean, that's what I come back to, and I'm not surprised that they took quick action just to not let this spiral even further out of control. They got their time in the headlines, and I don't think they want to remain in the headlines as much as this might be, getting clicks and all that. I don't think they want two of their most prominent head coaches and programs in the headlines accusing each other of cheating, basically, or in Saban's case, accusing A&M of cheating. So, I mean, that's a big accusation. So Jimbo responded how he responded, and the SEC has said, all right, enough of this. You've had your say, and that's all you're going to say for the time being. And why not shut it down? Because, hey, you've got spring meetings in a couple weeks. Let that bubble up and let those two guys say what they say the next time they're in front of microphones. But I think, too, I don't know if they reached out to Saban or if it was the Dion, interjection or response from Dion that led him to walking back what he said, but I'll be very curious to see. I'm sure he will be a lot more focused on what words he says the next time he's in front of microphones, I believe.
Yeah. It's funny to me, coaches, most of them will tell tell their players right now, everybody's got a camera, you got to be careful, but they don't follow their own advice.
Right.
And not just Nick Saban. It's been a couple other guys. I mean, Dana Holgerson got kicked out of a casino once and was probably hoping nobody found out about it, but there was security video of it. And I mean, that's not that big of a deal, but, it happened. So I don't know if it's not, I mean, why not being that big of a deal in the grand scheme of things, but overall, yeah, you got to follow your own advice. And I think what's most surprising to me is that it was Nick Saban that made the error in judgment, because usually everything's plotted out. Now, that whole thing was plotted out. He was trying to sow a little bit of panic within the big donors.
Yeah.
I mean, saying, it was a very political move. If you don't do this, everything's going to be bad. Where it's probably not going to change all that much. And also to make them feel like they're not giving enough, where I just can't imagine that they wouldn't be in any regard, given who Alabama's been since Nick Saban has been there.
Bro, have you ever seen a college stop asking for money?
No.
Of course not. So they don't care how much they've given. They need more.
Yeah.
I think it made that very clear. And if the numbers being thrown out there are accurate for some of these players, then you're Alabama, you've got like 20 of those guys. So you probably need a little bit more than just the one team that's got to pay 3 or 4 guys a good amount of money. You've got like 12 guys that are on that level potentially any given year. So, yeah, I mean, he was clearly trying to send a message to his donors of like, step your game up. I don't think he was taking a shot at them in any way or they're in desperate need of money, but it's like, hey, we better raise our game if we want to be the number 1 recruiting class in the country again every year, because these others are starting to spend big money as well. And in some cases, they've got more money than Alabama. So, yeah, it was a call to arms, and then he just got a little carried away and said something that he shouldn't have said and called out some people he shouldn't have called out. And, he walked it back. I think who was wrong in this situation, because Saban's the one apologizing is probably not the right word, but he walked it back. So he clearly knew that he misstepped, and Dion and Jimbo got their shots in, and Miami to whatever extent they did. And, the world's not worse for wear. It just made it really interesting there for about 24 hours.
Yep. We will open up the phones in the next segment, just for that segment, before we're going to replay Matt Rule, Carolina.
By the way, I did see a text from somebody just when we had a little crawl going on, and they were saying, the facilities were legal, and then the money was going under the table, and it's like, yeah, I understand that. I understand that paying for facilities is legal, but my point is you can't justify, we don't have the money to pay anybody when you're spending millions of dollars on these facilities, and you've got colored waterfalls and barbershops and $10,000 TVs and lockers, and then you say, well, there's no money for the athletes. I mean, yeah, you were investing in the athletes to an extent, but like many people will point out, it's great that I have a $10,000 TV in my locker, but I'd rather have a $10,000 check in my bank account that I can go buy whatever TV I want to watch at home. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, that was legal, and that was all up above board, but that wasn't really the point I was trying to make. I was just saying you can't really justify all the money that was being spent on stuff like that and then say you don't have the money to potentially pay athletes.
Buying 90 Xboxes is not something that you need to do. You know, Xboxes in their lockers. No, that's Xboxes at their apartment. That's where that is. You know, they maybe that like somebody leaves them there so they can do that. But
well, it's not even that. It's that you would rather have the Xbox at home.
Exactly.
It's great that it's in your locker, but you want to be able to go buy your own and have it at your apartment or the house that you can now buy because of NIL or whatever else.
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing is that stuff is just extra stuff. It's not weight room. It's not, you know.
Well, no, because you've already done all those things. So now you're just like, what's the next thing? And then that's what I'm saying is we reached a point where there's all this money, and the only thing you could do with it is basically, okay, what's the next most extravagant thing that we can do? And then everybody had barbershops, and everybody had, you know, a waterfall or some other thing, and everybody had the brand new weight room, and everybody had the TV in a locker. So then you had a PS4, all right, and we got a PS5. And then, you know, like you only do so much of that and spend so much money before it's just like, okay, what's really the difference at the end of the day with the facility part of it? You know, some are nicer than others, but they're all pretty dadgum nice at this point for those types of teams that we're talking about in contention for these types of recruits. But yeah, I mean, there's obviously millions and millions flowing, and instead of you seeing it go in the players' pockets, even if there was money going in their pockets, you know, under the table or $100 handshakes or whatever, we all know that happens too. But, you know, instead of it going there, it's being funneled directly to the players in a roundabout way, whether through the collective or what have you. So, yeah, don't have an issue with any of it, but it's just, it was obvious when that facilities race was on and it was just so much money swirling that these facilities started to get so extravagant that you did have to wonder, like, okay, so why can't we pay the players any money? Because there's clearly enough to go around that you can put a PS4 in everybody's locker and still be totally good on the